Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. I feel like I need to change it up. I say that all the time, but I am changing up our guest today. We have a very special guest. I mean, they're all special, but Makhosi, you are extra special. We have Makhosi, the Royal Shaman, with us. And I, I met Makhosi through the trust, and she's one of these people that when you meet her, you just immediately fall in love with her energy, her vibe, her essence, but I'm not 100% sure what she does. So I'm really excited to have a conversation with her today to learn about her because I watch her stuff on Instagram and I follow everything that she does. And I think she's super cool and super nice. And, that's the kind of person that I like to hang out with. So Makhosi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And I actually love that there's like a little bit of mystery. Like, what does she do? Oh, it seems so magical. But we're gonna take down some of that mystery today.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. And I think that you will be a very interesting guest for our listeners to hear from and learn about. So let's start with the big question. Tell me what you do. Tell us about your business. I mean, we've obviously, read the bio at the very beginning and explained who you are and what you do, but like tell me in layman's terms what your business is all about.
Yeah. I mean, at the core, you could say in simple terms, I help usually spiritual high performers break through their upper limits and really normalize their next level, whatever that may be. And so often, because of the kind of work that I do, there's like goal setting, right?
Mhm.
And then there's the magic that can happen when we choose alignment. So my work really centers around pulling out what is aligned for an individual and then supporting them in creating a business, creating a life that looks as good as it feels, right? So we have had kind of an epidemic of this illusion of success that
Mhm.
looks like um, what everybody else wants it to look like. And a lot of people end up feeling empty and unfulfilled. And I believe that we get to have both, that we can have a both and extraordinary life.
I love that. And, I have recognized that in my own life at times. I have found that there are times in my life where I'm very clear about where I want to go and how I want to get there. And I'm very energized and motivated by it. And then when you get there and it becomes your new normal, there's almost like a gap or a moment in time where you're not sure where you want to go next. And if you stay in that gap for too long, you can start to feel unfulfilled because you're not it's almost like there is a level that is being imposed that you aren't even consciously aware of.
Yeah, such a good way to put it.
Mhm. So, how did you get started in this business?
Yeah, so I just celebrated 5 years, actually,
Mhm.
my 5 year business anniversary.
It's
And
great. Congratulations.
thank you. The way that things have transformed over the years is it's drastically different. So I'm an initiated shaman, and when I returned from completing initiation, I came back to the United States and really like just put my shingle out, and I was doing individual spiritual consultations. And
Mhm.
over time, I found I was attracting a very specific type of person. These individuals tended to be leaders, some of them executives, entrepreneurs of really high levels, even celebrities.
Mhm.
And over time, that kind of morphed into me building a business that was uh, really designed for coaching leaders. And over the last year to 2 years and going forward, now I'm also seeing this morphing into teaching. So where I'm headed next is really bringing um, some of those frameworks, some of those concepts and ideas that are really valuable at the leadership level, and making them more accessible for others, and doing a lot of teaching, especially around the energetics of abundance, what it actually looks like to create an identity that can hold greater levels of wealth, of connection, of visibility, of love, even. And I feel that that is needed now more than ever. I think we think, once we hit a certain level, that then everything in our lives will just be fixed.
Mhm.
But we don't understand always that actually expanding to new levels requires you to embody a different version of yourself. And
And
you
that's
often
scary for
have to,
people.
it's so scary. You have to let go of so much of your own self perception, right? Have you ever, like, what kinds of ways did you have to shift how you saw yourself in order to hold greater levels of success?
You know, I had to see myself as being worthy of charging more.
Mm,
Uh, I I had a bit of a block, I think, in terms of what was a reasonable amount to charge for my services. And I remember distinctly years ago, this woman that I followed online, she had a promotion going on and she was doing a 1 hour, like usually you would have to buy her program, but she was doing a 1 hour coaching call and it was $1,000. And at the time, I thought that was, pardon my language, a shitload of money for an hour of someone's time. So I bought an hour because I wanted to know, like, what does someone get for $1,000? Like, that is crazy. I can't believe she's charging that, but I want to know. And so I did this coaching call with her, and I realized that I was a far better coach, advisor than she was. And that the only difference between her and I is she was confident in charging for the value that she believed she provided. And so that was an example of something that made me realize that I wasn't valuing myself high enough for the work that I bring to the table, the work that I do with my clients. So that's one way that I had to change. I had to
mm,
compare myself, which, we always say you shouldn't compare yourself to others, but it was actually that comparison that gave me the courage and the confidence to be bolder in terms of my pricing strategy.
I relate to that so much. That really was like the turning point for my business as well. I was invited onto a webinar by someone who's, kind of in the same industry, and I sat on his webinar, and everything that he was teaching was so basic. It was like beyond basic, and people were investing $100,000 a year to work with him. And at that time, I was only charging $300 a month to work with me. And after I watched that webinar, I was like, I have so much more depth. I've been able to create incredible results with clients far beyond what he was even sharing.
Mhm.
And it was only a few months later that then I went on to start charging 100K. And I'm giggling now because this year I decided I'm moving my one-on-one to a 5K for a consult, right? For my initial consult, mainly because I don't do one-on-one as much. But to even think, like, there was a time $1,000 for a 1 hour coaching call would also have sounded crazy to me. And then
Yeah.
in such a short time, here I am, uh, shifting to 5K an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how sometimes that contrast between what we see someone else doing and what we like. I think when you know you are really good at something and you know that you can have an impact, it becomes easier to make that shift. I was watching a video, I forget who it was on Instagram the other day, and they were talking about doing what is easy for you. And I think sometimes for women, what happens is because something is easy for us, we undervalue it because it's easy. We don't realize that it's hard for other people. So I look at myself and like, I am really, really, really good at helping people make money. And it's easy for me. Like it's so easy for me. It's like I see money everywhere. I see ways to increase revenue. I see ways to generate revenue. Like to me, that's so easy to do. But for a lot of people, it's really hard to do. But just because it's easy doesn't mean it should be inexpensive. And I
Right.
think sometimes people get caught up in that.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that you have written in your bio is that you empower high achievers to answer their calling and fulfill their potential by showing them how to stop relying on outdated manifestation beliefs and call in grounded and sustainable prosperity on demand. So, we just talked about generation. So, how do you help people to do that?
Yeah. One of the interesting things, I'm always looking at kind of what are the trends, what are the topics that people are talking about in my space. And as much as I resist it, I do kind of land in the manifestation space because I deal with energetics so much. And one of the things that I see really trending right now is this concept of like, be delusional, right? Just be absolutely delusional, and that's what you need to manifest. And while I get where people are coming from with that, because here I am, there's no part of me 5 years ago that would have even imagined that I would create a 7-figure a year business. Like my goal was, oh my gosh, if my husband and I could just make $100,000 together, that would be amazing, right? And then here we are, like he just hit his first 7-figure year. I've been running this big
Amazing.
business and hit 7 figures every year for a few years now. And it has not come as a result of being delusional. One of the things that we don't realize is that we create stories, we create
Mhm.
narrative and meaning to the events that are happening in our lives. And often those stories that we're creating prevent us from our next level, prevent us from actually creating or manifesting what it is that we desire. So, actually, my approach is that we need like radical truth. We need reality. And
Mhm.
although that can be kind of scary, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, I know what reality is. It's very difficult. I coach people all of the time and have them tease out, okay, what is the actual thing that happened? And what is the meaning that you are placing on that thing? What are the feelings and the thoughts that you are inputting on that event? And then making decisions from that versus what actually happened, and finding a more serving story for where you're going. So I can give a really great example.
That'd
I
be
am
great.
obviously a minority, right? And there's so many statistics about how few of us actually create 7-figure businesses, as
Mhm.
an example,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, it's a small statistic for women as a whole, and it's even smaller for women of color.
Yes. So, one of the things that I think we have to get real about is why that's the case, why that's happening. It's
Mhm.
not happening because we are less intelligent or less
Mhm.
educated, because obviously we've got that.
Mhm.
um, we have to be real about what are the systemic situations happening, what are the situations happening in our lives. When we're real about those, instead of putting a bunch of telling a bunch of story about why those things are holding us back, we can actually navigate and work with what we see as our disadvantages, and
Mhm.
actually make those our power, right? Like that can actually be a source of wisdom, a source of empowerment for us, but we have to first get real.
So can you give me an example of something that you have had to get real with in order to, move forward in your business?
Yeah, I'll give you a really recent one, actually. So my son was really struggling in school. He went to a great private school, like so
Mhm.
blessed that we were able to put him in such a great place. Um, but the environment just wasn't conducive to him. And when I looked at ultimately what was going to be most aligned for him, it was homeschooling him. And at that time, I had 40 hours ish a week free. I wasn't working in my business all those hours. I was, enjoy taking a day off to just self-care and exercise and right? But I had this entire story around, well, if if I homeschool, then I won't be able to run my business, right? If I homeschool, then I'm going to be too busy to do blah 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 in my business, right? And well, that's terrifying because this is what is creating our livelihood, right?
Right.
And the reality of that, I am now homeschooling. We've been homeschooling. We're coming up on a year
Oh,
that
and
we.
your business didn't fall apart?
It did not fall apart, and I would actually say I feel very strongly. We can check back in a year, right? But I feel that this year is going to be a quantum leap year for me, another quantum leap, because what that has kind of forced me to do, looking at the reality of the situation, the reality is like I have maybe 15 hours a week. It's caused me to look at, okay, what are the 20% of activities that are actually moving the needle forward? And who are the people that I'm working with that are actually moving the needle forward? Clients, team, audience, et cetera. I started really having to get granular about what matters and
Mhm,
what doesn't matter, right? Like
mhm,
what am I just attached to emotionally versus the reality? And so here I am. This year I'm going to be doing a lot of teaching, a lot of um more more scalable offers. And I think it's beautiful because now I'm going to be able to reach more people. I've really built my business on a lot of depth. We're still keeping the depth, but we're adding this layer of education to this intimacy, community, depth coaching component to the business. And it's also requiring me to start looking at, okay, what are my internal systems that I can just create? External, like kind of plug and play
mhm.
things. So I'm creating, one of the things is I've created an abundance ritual, and I'm working on a journal and a custom fragrance that all work together to utilize the subconscious to create abundance. And I would not have come up with that idea if I was still focused on, okay, how many coaching clients can I
Right.
take? Right? It's completely by just seeing what the reality is. It's completely shifted how I am thinking about my business, how I am thinking about how I'm creating impact, who I want to work with, so on and so forth.
That's great. And so what was the catalyst? How did you come to the decision that it was going to be okay to do that?
Yeah. Um, I, over the years, have really just seen so much evidence that when we do what is in our highest alignment, when any individual does what is in their highest alignment, it is also in the highest alignment for everyone, even though we might get pissy about it.
Mhm.
We might really resist it. We might get frustrated and angry and, whatever whatever we feel about it, it does ultimately end up being for the highest good when we prioritize ourselves. And in this instance, I had to prioritize like what is actually in the best interest of my son. And I want to be clear, I'm not making any judgment about
Mhm.
whether someone homeschools or does private school or public school. Like my son has been in all of them. Um, it's just a matter of I'm always looking at who is this person? Who are you? That is really the foundation to build aligned achievement, aligned success, aligned abundance from. And so when I look at him as an individual, I started looking at like, how does he learn best?
Mhm.
How does his energy flow? And I started started first visualizing what would an ideal day probably look like for him? And then also, who am I?
Mhm.
What are my needs energetically? How do I work best? And then creating a structure in my household, but also a structure in my business that actually allows for me to be aligned and for him to be aligned as well.
So there's a couple things you said that I would like to, dive deeper into. You said knowing what your highest alignment is.
Mm,
How do people know what their highest alignment is? And you also talked about paying attention to, your energetic needs and how your energy is when you are in the highest alignment. For people listening that have never done that, they're just doing what they got to do every day to survive. How do you connect those things together? How do you figure out what your highest alignment is?
yeah. Um, One of the things that I see as a just a major gap in conversations around success and performance and building a business is that we don't talk about how to actually connect with our energy, how to identify flow. Because
Mhm.
flow in a lot of spiritual business spaces, it's talked about as if it's like this airy fairy, I'm just sitting on the
Woo.
couch and like Sky Daddy just like makes the money rain on me all the time, right? That's that is not flow. And then on the other hand, we have a lot of like biohacking bros who talk about flow as being these very short periods of peak performance. And there's some truth to both of them, but really what flow is when we are so immersed in our activities that it's almost like we experience two things at once that are opposite. We experience active inaction. We lose ourselves in what we're doing. And my belief, my experience is that that is our natural state, that actually we're designed to have that be our primary experience in life. And so flow is the expression of alignment. That's how we know when something is aligned. So most people struggle to find what alignment is because we try to do it from our head,
Mhm.
right? That's why we don't have clarity
Yeah.
because we're trying to figure out what is aligned from our head. And you will not know what is aligned until you are in action, until you are actually doing things and then bringing awareness to what your energy was experiencing in those activities. So, a lot of women that I work with really struggle in this department. And that's why we end up working together because there's such a fear of taking risk
Mhm.
and getting it wrong, right? That we don't gather enough data about what works for us and what doesn't. So I invite every individual to experiment a lot. And you can start doing that in little ways. You don't have to go like, all right, I'm going to find alignment and then just completely burn everything to the ground. Don't do that. But start playing with what does it feel like or what happens when I teach like this? And how could I teach differently? And how does that feel? What is the experience? And then getting aware. So I can give you a really great example with my son that I think is helpful. So my vision of what homeschool
Mhm.
should be, right, comes from my experience in public education, right? Like being a student
Mhm.
in public school. That is my frame of reference. If I go and I try to recreate that in homeschool, for him, that's not going to work. So I have to look at, okay, how much can he learn before he checks out? How much time, right? So that gives me some insight. So we now have a 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off rhythm because I've identified for him he's got about 15 to 20 minutes of attention that he's actually going to be able to focus. And then he's going to need a little break or he's going to want a snack or whatever. And so I structure his day, but it took trial and error. It
Mhm.
took experimenting. We started with like 45 minutes, then we went to 30 minutes, then we tried focusing on 2 subjects a day and alternating. Now we do all 4 subjects, but in shorter bursts, right? But if I did what most people do, and that is see something that looks successful. In this instance, I'm talking about school, but it could look
Mhm.
like see somebody else's business that looks successful and then just try and copy what
Mhm.
they do and then fit your energy into that box and then wonder why you're frustrated, wonder why getting any effort into it, you've got so much resistance
Mhm.
and it doesn't work as well because you're not that person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you're so right. Like myself, I do not enjoy doing launches. It
Mm,
is not fun for me. It's not how I want to sell. It's not how I enjoy selling. And I made a decision years ago that I just don't do launches. Like, I can make money in so many other ways, but launches, I'm not in flow, I'm not in alignment, I'm not in joy. It's like it leaves me energetically drained. It
mm,
doesn't leave me energized. And I know other people that they thrive on launches. They love the energy, they love the concentrated period of time, they love the hustle, they love all of it. And for me, it's the exact opposite. It's like I hate it. I'd rather stick needles in my eyes than have a business that's launch based.
I love that example so much because in the business space, we are told like, if you want to be successful, you have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you need to have this kind of routine and you need to spend this amount of time in your business. And this is how you need to launch it. And these are the kinds of offers that work and these don't work. And it's so confusing. And the truth is that they all work.
Right.
They all work.
You have to figure
And
out which one works for you.
exactly, it has to
Mhm.
work for you. And you brought up another really great point in what you just shared too, that you recognized when you were drained versus energized, right?
Mhm.
So those are really great markers that we can start to look at as a symptom of flow. Like I do podcast interviews, I could probably do 5 in a day and it feel like 2 minutes. I have no idea how much time we've been talking. Um, and afterwards, I'm always so energized. I have to make sure that I do not schedule them too close to evening because I'm going to just be bouncing off the walls
Right.
in excitement, right? And I'm not saying that business always has to feel like that, and it's not going to. Sometimes it's a total shit show. But I feel like when you are doing work that is aligned for you, that will be your primary experience. That will
Mhm.
be 70%, 80%. And then the other 20% is like, the client ghosting you or the failed launch or,
Mhm.
because those are part of it too. But those are
Yeah.
also giving you a lot of really great information.
Yeah. It's interesting, I just had a conversation with a client of mine who's been doing kind of an inventory of his work, and he's been tracking how he spends his time, but he's also been tracking how his energy feels related to the tasks that he's doing with his time. And so you're essentially saying the same thing. If you can just bring awareness to what you're doing and identify the things that you're more energized by, then you can become more in alignment by doing more of the things that energize you versus the things that drain you.
Yeah.
And maybe not shaming ourselves when something drains us. Like I can't tell you how many times I tried to do launches and my launches were never successful. Like I never had big, 6-figure, 7-figure launches, but I think it's because I just didn't enjoy it. I can sell 6 figures off a stage. I can close a 6-figure deal, no problem, but it's not going to be in a launch method.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
not my thing. And so I had to realize that it wasn't my thing and be okay with that.
Yeah. I also see I'm just thinking about trends and kind of some predictions. I feel like we're moving in, and maybe you've seen this too with your clients. I feel like people are um, really becoming more aware. Like when something is misaligned, doesn't it just feel so much worse than it did even 2 years ago? Right? it just becomes so obvious when something isn't working for you, but we do have to let go of our ideas of, you know, who we should be or who we have to be, in order to be respected, in order to be successful, in order to be loved and cherished and connected and all of the things.
Mhm.
So much of the work is like first letting go of that layer of judgment because you already
Mhm.
feel crap, but then
Mhm.
you're putting like more crap on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you in your again in your bio, one of the things that you say is that um, you help people through practical strategies and inner work. Can you give me a couple of examples of practical strategies that people could take away from this call if they want to start to try to embody some of what we've talked about?
Mm. One of the things that I love to do with clients that you just mentioned that your client is doing that I do feel is so important as just a first step is to really do an energy audit,
Mhm.
right? I call them energy audits where you're not just identifying the time that you're spending, but really getting aware of how you feel, not just the emotions, right? There's emotions and then there's energy. And emotions are a form of energy. They can be telling us something, but also whether our energy increases or decreases, whether we feel in flow or whether it's like we're having to force it. Um, those can give you some really great insights. I also use various energetic tools like human design
Mhm.
and gene keys, which I feel like a lot of people can use that to put themselves in a box. But I also see that it can be a really great tool of freedom to start identifying what alignment would look like for you potentially.
Mhm.
So, for example, I'm a manifesting generator, and I know based off of human design and also experimenting in the real world. I didn't need the human design to figure this out, but it kind of gave me a shortcut. Um, as a manifesting generator, if I just have one offer, I am going to implode it. Because manifesting generators have lots of energy to go to a variety of places. That's kind of our thing, is to have multiple things going on at any time. And when we allow ourselves permission to have that, we end up being more successful. We experience more satisfaction
Mhm.
and whatnot. But I experienced early on in my business just having one offer. And I put so much focus and I started creating problems where there were no problems. And I started being way too accessible to my clients to the point where I was creating like codependent relationships with clients where they needed me for every single decision. And I almost destroyed my business in doing business that way. It
Mhm.
wasn't until I became aware, oh, actually, I probably need to have two or three, maybe even four things going on at the same time that allow for my energy to move in these different places. So I think that the experiment of using a tool like human design can be a really great way to start to identify what alignment looks like for you.
Cool.
Have you ever checked out your human design chart? I'm super curious.
I haven't, but I'm actually interviewing someone on the show next month who's written a book on human design. So I'm sure between now and then I will end up. I'm probably a manifesting generator as well. I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably are, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know yet. I have not checked it out.
Yeah. Well, I'll be tuning in because I'm super nosy and always curious about someone's energy.
Yeah, yeah. Her name is Jamie Palmer, and I'm trying to think the name of her book. It's like I have it and I can't see it. That's
Jamie
terrible.
Palmer. It sounds
Yeah.
that sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, it's like an HD design for I'm looking, I'm not seeing it. I have her book, but I'll put it in the show notes so that people see it. But she's written it's a business book about HD design, so it should be interesting. And I worked with her. I actually coached her years and years ago when she had a different business, and she was really going through a period of time where she felt like she wasn't in alignment with her business, and this whole HD design thing transformed her life and business, which is really great. So I can't wait to have a conversation with her about it.
Yeah, that'll be great.
So I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
Um, my first question is, and this was a question somebody asked me earlier today, and I loved it so much that I'm going to ask everybody. What would you go back, knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell your 20-year-old self?
Hmm. The 20-year-old version of me was such a like, I've always just loved learning for the sake of learning. And at that time, I was going down a path of um, just wanting success in like
Whatever it
whatever that
takes.
looked like. Um, I would go back and tell that version of me that you don't need a college education. Um, Not that I didn't get any value from it. I'm a person who I would have like 10 degrees right now just because I love learning. But I I think that I would have been able to, I mean, I don't really have regrets about it, but
Mhm.
I could have learned so much more faster if I had given myself permission to train myself, right? To
Right.
just
Non-traditional
Great.
ways.
Yeah. Yeah, to just um go on like a path of self-discovery versus traditional classroom style learning. And I I probably could have created a lot of success even at 20. I did experience my first business success at like 23, 24. So it's not that far off,
Right.
but it would have given me a few extra years.
Yeah. That's funny when you talk about the learning, you can probably see where your son gets his need for a non-traditional learning environment.
Yeah, but it's also been really challenging for me, honestly, because we learn in such different ways. Like when I was young, I always related to Belle from Beauty and the Beast. Like I loved The Little Mermaid, but in relation to like who I saw myself as, I was definitely a Belle. And I'm a person who will have like 20 books on my bed when I like I've got ADHD. He also has ADHD. So I'll hyper focus. I'll have like 20 books on my bed and just be diving in. Whereas he is very much a kinesthetic, hands-on learner. And
Mhm.
that is like the greatest challenge for me because it's complete opposite
Yeah.
of how I learn. So I feel like it's a gift to be homeschooling him because he's both visual and hands-on. So it's causing me to get better in how I teach. And I think that's kind of like the catalyst for this year in my business
Yeah, I
as
was just
well.
gonna say that. It'll help you be a better teacher in your business as well.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question for you is, what is the best advice that someone has ever given you?
Hmm. The best advice was that it's impossible for you to charge your worth, that your worth is innate, that you don't have to do anything to be worthy, and that I could separate what I was charging from my personal value. I think taking the making it not so personal has helped me so much in being able to charge more, right? Because I'm able to
Mhm.
charge what something is worth to the other person, not how I feel about myself, whether I'm confident or not. It just is what it is and based in just reality. And yeah, that
Yeah, I
that
love that.
made all the difference in the world for me.
That's really great advice. And I love how you separate it as charging what it's worth to the other person and not attaching your self-worth to the fee that you're charging. It's
Yeah,
really,
when we are
really
too
good.
entangled with that and somebody says no, right? It feels like a personal attack. Like, wait, you don't think that I'm worth
Exactly.
$100,000 when that person has so many other things going on in their mind that it isn't necessarily anything to do with you. And so when I price something at this point, I don't have any attachment to whether I'm high value because I charge a lot, or I'm low value because I charge a little, or I'm better because I charge a little than people who charge a lot. I get to just be more detached and look at who's my ideal client.
Mhm.
Who are they? How much money do they make? What do they find valuable in the marketplace based off of, the results I've created with other people, the results I've created for myself, the results they're likely to create, and
Mhm.
charge based off of that versus how I feel about myself.
Well, that is a great way to wrap up because I'm sure there are a lot of people listening that definitely uh, look at what they charge as a measure of what they're worth. And so I think it's a beautiful way to wrap up this show in terms of, the listeners really separating your self-worth from the fees that you charge. That's awesome. Thank
Thank you.
you, Makhosi, for being here. It was really, really great talking to you. I feel like I could have asked you a million more questions. Um, yeah, this has just been wonderful. And for those of you listening, I will put all of Makosi's contact details. You can find her on Instagram at the Royal Shaman in the show notes so that it'll be easy for you to find her and learn more about her and what she does. And who knows, maybe you'll do one of those little trainings that she's got coming up. It could be
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much for
you.
having me. This has been a great conversation.
Yes, thank you.